in his day, to survive, you needed a couple of acres. So the ordinary people who in his day weren't even freeholders, who owned nothing, had a claim. Nowadays, the way the world has turned, it's your home is the most important asset you have, and you should own all of that. If you like, that's my variation on Winstanley. There shouldn't be someone else owning the site your house is on. And that's where I come from. But the transformation in the race is astonishing. For the first time in all of human history, a significant percentage of the human race, significant is only 15%, own or have freehold, which is nearly ownership of property. It's never happened in human history.
How much do you own? How much property do you have, or think you own and have?
My wife has an interest in an estate in fee simple of 1 acre, and she grows about 30% of our food on it. So it's worth having an acre, and there's enough land in this country. At the moment, the entire the entire bricks and mortar of the country, excluding factories, is on just over 2 million acres. The country is 60 million acres. The domestic UK is 60 million acres. We live on the edge of it. And we pay tax, council tax. You go out in the countryside, the country acres pay no tax. They get a subsidy of about 113 euros per acre. And we sit on the edge of the country.
Yeah. Would this be a solution to poverty? You talk about in your book about land redistribution and how much we'd all have if it was divided up equally. I mean, we're in the worlds of fantasy and utopia.
No, that's not what we need. But we do need that adjustment. We need the site to become part of the house and to be owned outright. And we need to address the issue of the countryside. There is far more of it. I had an interview with, I interviewed Council for the Protection of Rural England a couple of years ago. And I said, how big is rural England? And I quote you exactly. The chap at the other end said, no idea. That's ridiculous. I then said, well, I'll be fair to you. How big is England? No idea. And this is an organisation campaigning for a constituency, the size of which it doesn't know. And there was a crucial third question where he put down the phone. I said, how much money do the owners of rural England get? And the answer is about 3 billion out of public funds. The countryside is lovely, very beautiful, but there is a cost. And there's two costs. There's a cost in money of about 3 billion to people who don't, do anything to earn it. Then there's a cost to the rest of us, or especially our children, who are put in smaller and smaller houses when there's no need. There's enough land to change the house building thing without taking very much land at all.
Is all the earth owned by somebody or some organisation? Are there bits of, I don't know, ocean somewhere which don't belong to anyone?
No, I failed to find a single part of the earth. The deep ocean is governed by international law, but the largest maritime power on earth is actually not the United States or Russia, and the maritime tracts are held in Queen Elizabeth's name. It's Australia. Australia's maritime territories are the biggest on earth, and they're all held in the Queen's name. It's about half of the Southern Ocean.
So Britannia still rules the waves, indirectly?
Well, definitely in the Southern Ocean, absolutely.
Which brings us, I suppose, to any future project, because this question from Tony in London. What would your guest view be about ownership of the moon and how to acquire it under Earth laws?
The moon, there's no formal claim on the moon such as the Crown has on the land of our country. I wouldn't suggest, if you buy from one of these agents who are selling bits of the moon, I wouldn't suggest your title is too secure. But at some stage, I imagine that states or crowns will claim the moon when colonies are built on it.
So will the same rules apply as those for empires in the 19th century, that, first one there, if you plant a flag, it becomes yours?
It becomes yours. It becomes the head of your country or your country's. If we don't change the system and make some form of private ownership possible, yes, it will all be state land. The Antarctic which is a lot, with 2/3 of it's in the name of Elizabeth II, is tricky because it's also governed, and it's not exclusive, by a treaty which prohibits absolutely any form of personal ownership, ignoring the fact that one individual has her moniker on 2/3 of it.
Yes.
So, but that's an anomaly. You know, the one isn't exclusive of the other. They sit together.
Where did this obsession with property come from, Kevin?
It came from, I suspect, the lust for power in this tiny group who've owned all land throughout most of history. If you owned the land, you controlled the peasantry, you got all the money, and that's where it comes from. I mean, when William the Conqueror came here, there were only 2 million people here. You know, that was... I mean, who needs more land? They couldn't till it all. And what's the first thing the guy does? Forms a new army and marches on Wales. And when that didn't work out, he formed a different army and he marched on Scotland, without having enough people in England to till the place. This lust for land is probably one of the deepest, greediest instincts in human nature.
Where did your obsession with who owns what come from?
The Sunday Times Rich List, 1988. Dr. Philip Beresford, who does the Rich List, asked me to establish the wealth of the aristocracy, and that seemed dead easy. They all owned land. I thought, you know, a couple of days in the land registry would have it all. And I went up to the land registry, and that's where I began to discover there's something wrong here. Most of them weren't in the land registry at all. Most of the land of the hereditary aristocracy is not registered in our land registry. You and I have to register our homes, but those who have held land from the medieval period, if you like, don't have to register it. There's 2 classes of citizens here.
Well, yes, and you're a subject and I'm a
3,
citizen.
if you count citizens, large landholders, and subjects.
Am I better off being a citizen than you as a subject?
In law, probably you are. You can't be thrown out, but I could. So I have to guard my words carefully.
What next? Have you got this out of your system, Kevin? Having charted who owns every single scrap of land on this planet?
No, Simon, I'll tell you, when I was writing the other book, I discovered something really odd. There are 2 doomsdays in Britain, not one. One is very famous, everybody knows about it and people worship it, and actually it isn't a list of landowners at all. It's a swag list for the land and the assets that William the Conqueror grabbed. But in 1872, this country got a real doomsday. Everybody who owned any land had to register. And whereas the first doomsday is treated as something unique, it's not. There are hundreds of them around the place. The second doomsday appears to be unique in world history, and it disappeared 5 years after it was produced. Nobody has written about it, looked at it, or used it, the doomsday itself, since 1881. And it's one of the most important economic works ever done in our country, and it's contemporary. When I went in search of the aristocratic wealth and found there was a great big black hole in the land registry, I was able to go back to the second doomsday and trace all the aristocratic states because they were in it. And that doomsday doesn't occur in any British book, anything.
So they want to talk to you?
Who, the landowners?
Yes.
No.
How do you get around that?
Between the doomsday and cuttings and wills and things, you can get an idea. But it's vague.
Well, we'll look forward to that, and I'm sure you'll come in and have a chat about that one as well. In the meantime, your job is done. You have charted the world, and you've told us who owns everything. Kevin Carl, thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Kevin's book is Who Owns the World? The Hidden Facts Behind Land Ownership. A mighty tome, and it's 25 quid. Thank you very much, Kevin.